Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday night. It is Tuesday night with Ben Stowe. But right now, Ben hasn't quite gotten back to the office yet, or back to the house yet for our show. He's been running behind today, and we'll be getting into our show in just a little bit and talking about speakers. But before we got to that, I wanted to just give you guys an idea of where he's at. So we're going to pop up this. We've got this video right here from the Highway Patrol here that will pop up here so you guys can see what's going on. Let me just get this all set here because we've got a live camera feed coming to you live.
It is a
from the Bemidji Highway Patrol right there. There's Ben Stowe coming down the freeway. Yes, he's headed home. He's wanting to get back on time for our show. You can see there he's just going down the road. Notice he signals when he's going down the road here as he's he's pulling over. I bet he's got a text message he's got to send right now. So he pulled over and he stopped right now. And you notice he has a police escort. That's how important Ben Stowe is to our show. So we're going to let our police friends handle that, and hopefully Ben Stowe will be able to come in just a second with our show for tonight. Now I can't get that.
This is interesting. Stop and starts. This female driver has done a couple of fake outs to the police officer when she approached the interchange at the 55 freeway. It looked like she was
front. I can't get those things to clear off. So Ben can join us at any time. There he is, right there.
Best intro ever, John. I couldn't see the video, but I was just wondering, was it a white Bronco or
no? It was like it was your Kia, I believe it was. Yes, that's it.
You know what? I did have a Kia in Texas. That was my rental car was a Kia when I was in Texas.
So tonight, gang, we're going to be hitting a topic which we've already talked about this on a few occasions, but tonight I wanted to just dig into this idea of the speaker blowing up speakers. This fall, I've been seeing a rash of DJs basically, saying, oh, I blew this up, and the frustrating part is they keep pointing back to the speakers as if it's the speaker's fault. And Ben, from our talks and such, yes, it can be occasionally speaker, manufacturer issues. There's going to be electronic components bad, but 9 times out of 10, I don't think it's the speaker's fault.
I would say 99 out of 100. Well, probably more accurately, 97 times out of 100. It's not the speaker's fault, because that's kind of what the failure rate really is about 2 or 3%.
Wow.
So, it's like this. Since we opened with a car chase, which, and of course, I'm sitting here the whole time, but it was still good to. Anyway. If you take your car and you drive it into a light pole, that's not a warranty issue. That's an insurance issue, and we want to kind of correlate the same thing to a loudspeaker. If you blow up the loudspeaker, probably was not due to poor design on the loudspeaker. Now, that's not to say that loudspeakers are perfect or that there aren't some that are manufactured more poorly, but there's a difference there. That was due to abuse, and people don't like to hear that. Believe me, it's a very unpopular thing. But when we try to explain, look, you nearly set that driver on fire. That's why it's not covered under warranty. That's the equivalent of driving your car into a wall.
Mm-hmm.
You did that, not the speaker. Now, obviously, we work very hard with manufacturers to get those things covered anyway. Many times we're able to get manufacturers to make exceptions for our customers. We work very, very hard. But I think the customer, the manufacturer, and us would all prefer that it doesn't blow in the first place.
Right.
It's not good for anybody. Nobody's having a good time at that point,
For sure. And there's ways to avoid that. What is one of the common, where are we going to look? Is it a wiring issue? Is it a too big of an amplifier, or I should say too hot of a signal, a poor board? Where is our problem coming in this?
Without giving this any real advanced thought, I'm just going to say the first couple that come to mind here. And number one is people say, well, I shouldn't be able to blow a powered speaker because the manufacturer picks the amp and picks the speaker.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that one used a few times.
That's true. They do. And obviously compromises have to be made when a powered loudspeaker is made, both to equate for weight and also cost. But the reality is you can still blow a powered loudspeaker very easily. I would be willing to wager that I could do it with regularity, that you could give me just about any powered loudspeaker and I could probably blow it. I would just bet. because I know what makes them fail.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no get out of jail free card. The manufacturers have gotten far better at how they try to protect their equipment from you. I mean, that's, we need to think about it in those terms. I mean, that's the manufacturer's engineers are doing, is basically saying, okay, how can we make this speaker endure the most horrible thing that can happen to it? And they've gotten much better, but there's just no fail-safe way. So that in mind, that leads me to the first two things that I think of as a concern. Number one is heat. You can drive a loudspeaker coil into a thermal crisis without ever clipping it or limiting it.
Really?
Absolutely. Because it's about energy over time, whereas, we're talking clip and limit typically are referring to peak moments. So with a very high average energy, a heavily compressed signal, energy over time, we can heat up that coil substantially and yet never clip or limit the signal.
So just let me put a hold there. So
yeah.
Manufacturers have multiple lines. Generally, they have a lower price line, a mid line, and a high line. Let's just say that they had three. Now, would that be one of the big differences, that they're generally their top of the line or their higher end would be more conducive to be able to handle the heat better than maybe more of a lower level entry type cabinet?
Yeah, more than likely. I mean, it's just common sense that when you spend more, you get more in most cases. And so, we expect more rugged, more reliable, loudspeakers that are just built better, and thus they're going to take more abuse.
Mm-hmm.
But take, for example, one of the sponsors of your show in Electro Voice. One of the notable differences in the ETX is the ETX speaker has algorithms in it that are attempting to calculate what the voice coil temperature might be. So this is a notable difference from where we talk about temperature being a concern. This loudspeaker is basically saying, okay, well, I've monitored this much energy over this much time, therefore I can extrapolate my voice coil is probably this temperature. And it's, again, attempting to protect from that. And that uses the same technology that they use in their touring boxes. The line arrays that we have that same technology, where the amplifiers have a DSP in them. Even though the amplifiers are in racks and the PA is hanging in the air, the amplifiers have been given algorithms based on their extensive testing to try to understand how hot that voice coil on that loudspeaker is and to protect it from that.
How would it compensate then to protect it? Is it
reducing drive, bringing level down? We in a previous show, I put up a great graphic that talks about the logarithmic relationship between drive signal and temperature, and it's astounding because it's logarithmic. That at some point on the graph, I think we were talking about gaining just 3 dB more of loudness, and it was an increase of almost 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it just really jumped up quickly.
And so, to the end user, you think, well, it's only 3 dB louder. Yeah, but it's twice as hot now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking paper burns at about 451 degrees, and we're driving this loudspeaker at 700-800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's more than adequate to melt solder. So, once you start thinking about how dangerous heat can be to the process, you can really understand where, compression in particularly, and, driving a speaker into limit continuously, basically where you are condensing the amount of energy over time into that loudspeaker can be absolutely fatal to it.
So if we had two different instances, maybe we had one where we were miking a bass drum and we were getting a thump, 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 thump right along. And then we had another where we were maybe doing a bass guitar where it was giving us a longer musical note, but very low frequency. Would the bass guitar be harder on the subwoofer, or would the bass drum, which seems to be hitting harder, kind of a snapping more? Which one would be more difficult?
Well, in this example, you make an excellent example, by the way. In the bass drum, we would expect to have a high transient, which is that, punch coming through. And so that's probably not going to create much of a heat issue as opposed to the bass guitar, where, again, it's producing this note over a long period of time. So it's producing more heat. I think that's a good analogy for the example you're trying to make. Which it leads to another potential cause of failure, though, which is overexcursion, where the cone simply comes out too far. Mm-hmm. If that transient on the kick drum is too much. But probably more damaging than bass guitar is electronic music. EDM and that sort of thing tends to be heavily compressed. It has a lot of energy. And frankly, in most recorded music today, the very tracks that we play as DJs tend to be very compressed and almost by design. You can look up a thing called the loudness wars, where the record labels are kind of, party to this wholesale murder of loudspeakers. And of course, the loudspeaker engineers are working hard to compensate. And that's why we don't have speakers blowing up every week. But all that compression in the music is becoming an issue because it's not just a bass guitar. It's a combination of the kick drum, the bass guitar, the drums. Everything is, melded into one mastered mix, and then that mix is compressed. And so that loudspeaker is working very hard at times.
So in a situation like that, where we have that compressed audio track and we are going to be doing an evening of the EDM and such, but we need to be playing at a volume, if that's pushing that subwoofer or our pair of subwoofers to the point of where, they're getting very hot, what's the best way to deal with that? Is it to, if we need to be playing at that volume, is it to add more subwoofers, or how can we get? It
absolutely is. Either have better subwoofers or more subwoofers or both. Really, when I look at what DJs do with their sound systems, it's nothing short of extraordinary to me. There's just the physics involved. And I think it might've been on a previous show where I said, if it was possible to do those types of gigs with that type of level with a single pair of subs in the concert industry, we'd do it too. We're not in love with unloading trucks, and so there is just a matter of physics involved with the amount of air you push and that sort of thing. So have enough rig for the gig. That's fundamentally it. Otherwise, think about it. We'll go back to our car analogy here in our car chase. There's a difference in the way police cars are built and standard cars are built for a good reason, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a difference in race cars and standard cars. And you can take your standard off the lot car onto a racetrack and you can run it hard for a while. And that's what you're doing when you're asking these, I don't know what name I want to say, but the subwoofers that are being sold to DJs are not the same subwoofers that are being sold to concert tour. And DJs don't need that level of subwoofer. I'm not saying that, but it's sort of like saying, well, I've got a real nice souped up sports car, but it's still not a NASCAR. The touring subwoofers are a NASCAR.
Sure.
Those things are built to run hard all the time, for years. And so, DJs say, well, I went and bought a subwoofer for $700 and I can't do concerts with it. No, you can't. Not arenas, And again, just to be clear, I'm not saying you need to go buy concert touring subwoofers, but you do need to have enough subwoofers for the gigs that you're doing, or tops. Now, I feel like I should stop here and say adding tops is a dangerous proposition too. It's much easier to add subs because when we add tops, we can create phasing problems with the acoustics. So remind me to kind of circle back on that, John, because I don't want people just stacking up walls of tops and then wonder why it sounds so bad.
Well, this isn't working.
Well, it'll make sound.
Yeah, it will.
It'll make noise.
There'll be weird spots. And so sticking on the subwoofer idea for a little bit more. If you were doing sound, you mentioned if you're doing live sound or sound for a band, let's say you're doing a classic 80s rock band, that likes to be loud and proud. And one week you're doing that, and the next week you're doing same size crowd, same building, and you're maybe doing an EDM event where you've got a bunch of EDM artists. Would you take the same rig when you're talking your commercial gear for both of those events?
Same room?
Same room, same number of people. It's just you're doing 1 week you're doing a rock and roll band, 1 week you're doing an EDM type of event.
Yeah, probably. There's probably not a substantial difference needed between those rigs. Rock bands can be particularly challenging, though, because you have amps and acoustic drums and things on stage, and you need to compensate for that stage noise. So it is a bit more demanding out of a rig. But I think I would like to have all that extra firepower for the EDM event, too. You could basically turn people's livers inside out, and they like that. So, I would say probably, yeah, Now, would I use the same system for an EDM event, an 80s rock band, and a wedding? Probably not. There's a lot of debate right now about things like the column systems, the Evox, the Evolves, that sort of thing, versus tops and subs and that sort of thing. And it comes down to the fact that they're apples and pomegranates. I mean, they're yes, they're both speakers, but they're fundamentally very different. And if you're looking for a high level of portability and exceptionally wide coverage, then columns are probably a great choice. If you're looking for sheer firepower, they're probably not. So, it's having the right gig, right rig for your gig too.
Yeah, I think
I want to point out, I've got this, one man's garbage is another man's prize, and I have a crazy collection of blown up stuff.
Oh yeah, we've talked about these a few times. Yeah, let's take a look.
We have, and and I keep them around for that reason, because they're
great props. Yes.
So imagine a brand new shiny penny, and how that would look, a really bright copper color, or even like a gold brass color. That's how the windings on a voice coil look when a loudspeaker's new. And so take a look at this one and look at the color of that. And you can see there, actually, you can see a failure point there. So there you go. Look how dark that is. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody says to me, well, I wasn't pushing that very hard, I'm like, that thing is charred black.
Yeah.
You heated that thing up a lot.
And that was just from heat. Now, that wasn't because of sending a clipped signal through it. It was just a heat.
It's heat. It has to be continuously hot to turn that dark color. Not just clipping it one time is going to do that. This takes some time to do. And again, the loudspeaker manufacturers, when they get these failures, they pull these things out and they put them under the microscope, and they always try to figure out how they can make these things better. But at the end of the day, physics still prevails. Where a clipped signal might be a problem would be, high levels of distortion, maybe over excursion, where it simply pushes out too far and misses the gap, or you break the surround on the loudspeaker, those kinds of things. Here's a good example of a high frequency that was given low frequency. And of course, high frequency wavelengths are very, very short. And so these drivers don't move very much, whereas low frequency drivers, they're moving a lot. Mm-hmm. Well, this one was given a low frequency and it was forced to move too much. And it slammed right into the phase plug and right into eternity. So that high frequency driver, you can see there, the windings are still a copper color. Mm-hmm. The discoloration there is maybe mostly just from oxygen, and just probably wasn't a heat issue. It just got slammed into the phase plug and went to loudspeaker heaven.
That was the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, these high frequency drivers, you really can't even feel it move. They're designed to move so little. Whereas a low frequency driver, you can move quite a lot. Mm-hmm. Freely with your hands. And that's another thing. If we encounter a low frequency driver, that we very gently, mind you, with your hands, press on the cone and it's crunchy. That's because that coil has gotten hot and expanded, and that speaker's done for. So then you don't have to be careful with it anymore. It's done.
Then it's time to replace it. And
you want to be careful first, though, just to find out. Other times, though, these small wires can occasionally get a burst of power that can cause that wire to melt. There's an old saying, what do you call a wire that's too short and too thin? A fuse.
Fuse, yeah.
So we maybe made a fuse out of our loudspeaker, but that is almost never the cause of failure. Especially with powered loudspeakers, almost always the cause of failure is heat, as opposed to over excursion or melting a wire or those types of things. Heat is our number one enemy.
Okay, so we've talked about heat. Now, the one that they're chatting about in the chat rooms and such is overdriving speakers. And how difficult or how easy is that to do with a modern speaker?
Oh, it's plenty easy. It's plenty easy to do, even when the manufacturer matches the amp and the driver in the box. Even when they put in DSP, these things certainly help, but they are not magic get out of free cards. Now, gain structure, which again I know we've talked about doing a show on that, and we really do have to. that's it's not all that complicated, but it's a thing that is going to require some time to properly walk people through. That can create us some problems where, in an attempt to protect themselves from these clipped and distorted signals, loudspeakers begin to limit. And again, the ETX series has a thermal sensor, which is sort of examining the properties of the signal and saying, yeah, this is a problem, you're going to heat me up. And it's looking at the caliber of those signals, whereas some lower grade loudspeakers will just allow that to continue until they, burst into flames or something. I mean, they're not smart enough to protect themselves. Overdriving, yes, but again, it's generally not because you caused the cone to over excurt or you blew up something in the cone. It's probably that you overdrove it and maybe the speaker compressed or you just ran it into the limiter, which is acting like a bit of a infinite ratio compressor, and you heated it up. And we probably come back to heat being the ultimate cause of failure. Plus, your amplifier is going to get very hot if you're running that thing, overdriving that thing, and you can create failure on those components too. So,
how about, I've had situations where people have had one of my wireless microphones, and they're talking into it, and all of a sudden they hold the thing point blank and they scream into it, and on my little the little thing on the front, it all of a sudden goes completely black, and just a little light shows up on the top, and it's just like that little light is like, oh my gosh, what is going on to me? At that point, I'm guessing that they are completely clipping my microphone.
Oh yeah, they're clipping the microphone preamp, they're clipping the microphone itself, they're clipping probably everything in the chain, depending on your gain structure, but that's unlikely to cause a loudspeaker to fail.
Okay.
Certainly not a quality one. I mean, that's a high transient, but that single action is probably not going to cause the loudspeaker to fail.
Okay.
I would be surprised and disappointed if a loudspeaker failed from that one instance. Now, that doesn't mean that you couldn't have something basically teetering on the edge of failure, and that's the final, as they say, the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah, push it down.
But that in and of itself wouldn't scare me. Feedback, somebody dropping a mic, which creates a very high transient when that mic hits the ground, of course. All things that I would not expect to immediately destroy a quality loudspeaker.
How about...
Not good for it.
Precisely, yeah. And it's not good for the microphone either. I've replaced elements, unfortunately.
No, it's not good for any of that stuff.
Although there are the major manufacturers, they do take care of you when you buy quality mics. So we have our board. And if I'm running in and I have one of my channels, and basically that channel is into the red, but yet the master going out isn't into the red, could it be that I could be kind of clipping a channel, and would that do it? Or does it have to be that it's a combination of the channel and the master that's basically way into that red, beyond the healthy point of the red spectrum, we'll call it?
No, you can absolutely do it. That way. I mean, what we're talking about now actually is gain structure. We're now just going to have an impromptu gain structure conversation here, and there's all these different places where gain structure takes place. On a wireless mic, maybe it's, and we've talked about this in a previous show, the gain on the microphone transmitter itself, adjusting that gain, and then adjusting the gain on the receiver, and then adjusting the gain on the microphone preamp on your mixer, and then adjusting the gain on the channel, to have, maybe it's at Unity or whatever, and then your master, and then the amplifier. But it's, every step is crucial, and they have to be done in the right order. You can't fix a problem later if you have a problem here. If your microphone is clipping, you are going to get a clipped signal everywhere else in the chain. You can have a quieter or a louder clipped signal, but you still have a clipped signal. And so absolutely, if you're clipping that channel input on your mixer, all your master is doing is attenuating that clipped signal, so you have a lower level clipped signal. If that makes any sense.
So with and the real question I guess I was asking is that if the channel is a clipped signal compared to the microphone it's a clipped signal, is one more damaging to the speaker ultimately than the other? Or is it basically the clipped is a clipped is a clipped?
Yeah, I'm not going to split hairs, and I'm going to say a clipped is a clipped is a clipped.
Okay.
We could probably break this down into a really scientific discussion and do some study.
No, that's not what we're wanting to do tonight.
No, we're not going to go there. We're going to say that a clipped signal is a clipped signal, and it's never good. So why bother? I'm not even going to waste any energy thinking about which one's worse. Don't do it.
Sure.
Simple. Try to address that at the point of clip. because why in the world would you want a clip signal anywhere?
Right.
It doesn't sound good. It isn't good for your system, and it's not good for your clients or your reputation. And it's an easy fix. So don't do it.
And again, the actual proper way to be setting up the gain structure and such is something we want to demonstrate in that future show. And I'm hoping that with the between now and NAMM, with kind of the holidays, and there's this little time where there's no conventions going on, that we can make this work.
Good to have you up here. I've still got I've got Ohio, Chicago, Tampa, Atlanta, Denver.
So anyway, Kat and I will be doing the gain structure show.
Well, we have some great folks at NLFX that would love to help you out. You know what? I'm really struggling right now because I've been asked to mix sound for. I don't even normally say this. I shouldn't. But I've been asked to mix sound for Lee Greenwood, which I think would be a great opportunity. And I'm struggling with schedule conflicts right now, and I'm probably going to have to pass on that.
No.
And it's he's performing with Crystal Gale, and so I think it'll be a great night. But anyway, we have to prioritize.
Busy schedule.
Yeah.
Busy schedule. So
I sort of feel bad now that I said that. I feel like we could just, can we go back and edit a live show so I'm not name dropping anymore?
Yeah, don't worry about name dropping. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you're doing a big show, like when you're doing it for a championship football team or something. These are just.
Well, and I tell you what, there's a possibility of that again in January. So we'll have to figure out our schedule and we'll get that gain structure show done. So I don't know what's going to happen with the football game yet or not. That's still up in the air.
We're in the middle of the season, or towards the latter part of the season. But there.
And we're closing in. It's time for me to start getting stuff nailed down. Anyway. So those are some of the fundamentally key things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to chat just a little bit about, because this is as people have been getting the Evox or the Evolve, the Evolve here, and they've talked about a little bit with the Evox also, is the difference in we talk about the right rig for the gig and such, and we've got 12-inch subwoofers, 15 and 18-inch subwoofer options, and for one reason or another, some people like the 12 because of easier portability, smaller vehicle, whatever. Is there a kind of a suggested size that you recommend to people when they're like, hey, Ben, I'm a wedding DJ. Is there one that you would steer them towards more, or is it just really their preference and what they want to do?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a show if I didn't say it depends. We just finished up a church install, and we put 21 inches in there, and so smooth on the bass guitar, just holds notes that 18s maybe struggle with. There's advantages to 18s over 21s though. They're certainly going to hit deep and hard and low. 15s are maybe a bit punchier. 12s, you're going to lose some of that low end, but now you're getting into a lighter sub. So it really depends. There's definitely a sound characteristic difference between an 18, a 15, and a 12. And of course, some DJs do use 21s. So no, I don't know that there's a blanket answer I could give. If you want to put everything in the back of your two-door car, you're probably going for the Evox or the Evolve. And you know what? If you're doing weddings for a couple hundred people, you're going to be happy. If you want to go do stadiums, that's not what they're built for. And neither is a pair of 18s, by the way. But if you want to go do a school dance for 1,000 kids, I would say, gosh, I don't think having 4 dual 18s is out of the question for something like that.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you want to spend and what you want to carry and what your clients expect of you. But I'd probably roll with something like that or more.
So now you mentioned the 21-inch sub, and a question that came to mind is, as I'm looking at my subwoofers and crossover points. Granted, each manufacturer's sub is going to have a different sweet spot for the crossover point, but would you use a different crossover point to go from a 21 to an 18 to a? I've never played with the 21, so I have no point of reference when it comes to what a 21-inch sub can do.
Yeah, probably so, but I wouldn't make it a blanket answer of 18 versus 21. I think on these 21s, we actually set the crossover point at like 70. On my touring rig, the crossover point, those are 18s. The crossover point there is 80, so it is a higher crossover point. But it depends is the answer. Couple things we have at play here, and this is something they call damping factor, but basically that cone has to move and then change direction and move back the other direction. And so the accuracy with which it does is important. And obviously it's got to move a long ways to make those long wavelengths, and it has to move a certain number of times per second to generate that frequency. So short, non-nerdy answer, yeah, it probably is different. Mm-hmm. But it also has to play into fact what your tops can do. The crossover point isn't singly dedicated to the subwoofer. It's the point at which the tops and the subs cross over. And so you have to find that common ground. Anyway.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never played with a 21. I mean, I've seen those at a couple of shows, NAMM or somewhere like that, but I don't know if I've ever heard one in action, or at least knowingly heard one in action.
Well, and bigger isn't always better. Like I said, I mean, these sounded amazing. The client was super stoked. We were happy. But it's not the end all save all. It's not as simple as people want to make it to say, well, I got a 21, therefore it's better. There's a lot of good options out there, and there's a lot of bad options out there, or maybe wrong options for the application. So the product in and of itself isn't wrong, but it's wrong for the way it's being used. And that's why there's so many different variants. And you could very well love 21s, and maybe you wouldn't, sure. Depending on what you want to carry and what you want to spend and what your expectation is, and what tops you're pairing it with. There's a lot going into the equation.
Just checking.
And any imbalance in there could lead us to a situation where we're asking something from our speakers they're not designed to do, and that's when we run into trouble.
So we would have a lot of issues. I'm just checking the.
I wouldn't pair a 10-inch top with a 21-inch subwoofer.
That was my question here. Is what did they put above them for cabinets and such?
These were, and I'm normally not a fan of dual 15s. I'll just come right out and say that. But in this case, it was dual 15s with a 4-inch high frequency. And I sort of winced a little bit. I'm like, dual 15s. They sounded amazing. And they were very expensive loudspeaker too. But boy, that 4-inch voice coil on the HF was so smooth. This system really sounded good. It was really good leaving this install feeling like we had really done a good service for these people. Because this was a pretty high dollar deal.
Wow.
But it was 15s for the tops, and I think you could probably pair 12s with over a 21 as well. But here again, all 12s are not equal, and so it's a matter of sort of engineering a system to work together.
We had a question, and this is a good one we're going to dig into. For our high frequency cabinets for a mobile DJ application, where would the height of the speaker? How would you judge of how high to have that for a typical mobile DJ application?
Well, now we're getting into some easy questions, so that's good because we just waded through some really murky water.
Yeah, we did a nice chat. You've been doing very, very well. There's some good information there.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I would say higher than head height, but there is, and it depends on this as well. If our loudspeaker does not have an adjustable pole socket hole in it, or you don't have an adapter, which, shameless plug, we sell these little adapters and they're really cool. Then I would say probably head height, because if you've got a, let's say, typical 40-degree vertical pattern, I'm trying to see if I can do this here.
Yep.
So some of that sound energy is headed towards the ceiling, and some of it's headed towards the ground, and some of it's headed straight on. And so by putting it about head height, maybe just slightly higher, most of the people in the group are going to get more of that high frequency and the intelligibility, and you're going to hear all the properties of the music you want to hear. Ideally, we'd get it up higher than head height, and the exact height might depend on the length of the room, but higher than head height, and then see if I can do this with my hand, tilt it down.
Sure.
So we're not pointing sound at the ceiling, and we're now using that high frequency coverage to get the length of the room. Maybe favoring it a bit towards the back 2/3 of the room because you're going to have a little off-axis attenuation in the front third, so it's going to sound more even front to back. So that might be a situation where picking up one of those little adapters from us and getting your high frequency up a little bit higher and tilting it down probably pays some serious dividends for you.
Interesting. Yeah, because I know some of the cabinets I have, I believe the ETX have too, and I've used them in a couple of different situations, but I think for just a general wedding dance floor, I don't think I've used that, but I'll have to
nice when they have them built in, and there's a lot of loudspeakers that do, and so that's a really good thing to do. Just get it up, tilt it down a little bit, as the old saying goes, point the loud part towards the people.
Now you mentioned at head height. Which part would be at at or a little above head height? Are we talking the tweeter, or are we talking the woofer of the cabinet?
Well, I would say putting the high frequency driver, or the tweeter as you call it, a little bit higher than head height. And again, head height is different for everybody. I'm a little over 6 feet tall, so but I would say try to get that tweeter above my head just slightly more if you can tilt it down.
Sure.
And here's the reason why. Okay. These really, really small wavelengths from that high frequency, we established that this thing's just not moving very much, right? Those wavelengths are very, very small. And so they're going to be easily knocked down or penetrated by us. So having people in the way is going to absorb or knock down those high frequency wavelengths. And thus the people behind us aren't going to get as many of them. And the more people, you have, the more completely you're going to block that signal. And pretty soon you have basically mush. Other than what's bouncing off the ceiling or the walls, your direct SPL is going to be kind of mush. So by putting it a little bit higher, more of it's going to get to the back of the room. And by putting it higher and tilting it down, way more of it's going to get to the back of the room.
Sure.
Now, maybe you don't want it to get to the back of the room, but that's...
there are certainly situations like that where you've got older guests who kind of congregate towards the back. Ben, people are asking, what is that little device, that adjustment pole?
I have no idea what the number of it is. I tell you what, anybody...
Give me a name. What would it be referred to if I do a search on the website?
It's made by K&M. It's a great little piece of steel. I just don't recall the part number, but here is my personal vow that if you message myself or Katie, we will absolutely get that information to you. I didn't intend to mention it during the show. Otherwise I'd have a part number handy for you. But it's not terribly expensive. And you know what? Mention the show and it's going to be even less expensive. How about that?
There we go.
A little bribery for you. But anyway, yeah, we can get that info to anybody either by contacting myself directly on Facebook or via email, Ben at nlfxpro.com, Katie, Katie at nlfxpro.com, or any way you choose to reach out to us, customer care at nlfxpro.com. We'll go to our customer service folks. They're fantastic. Or you can go to our website and click the contact us. But again, you can certainly message me personally, and I'll make sure that you get taken care of on that.
Yeah. There's so many K&M products on your website. There's no way to find it quickly.
I told somebody one time that we carry over 100,000 products, and they said there's no way that's possible. But then, as we learned last week, Roscoe alone has 118,000 products.
Yeah.
We probably carry far more than 100,000 products because K&M has a bazillion, and Electro Voice has over 1,000, and we carry over 120 brands. So you know what? Here's the deal. Don't worry about it. Just message. We'll find you the part number. We'll get you a great price. Certainly didn't mean to spend this much time trying to sell you something, but it's a great little solution for that.
And like in my case with my EKX, so I've got my ETX, which have that capability. My EKX don't. So this would be a great little addition to my stand that would allow me to tip those up or tip those down just a little bit, and a tilt connector of some sort. Yeah.
It works really good, and actually it has a kind of a rotary dial on it that you can dial in a specific degree of tilt, which is really nice. So one, you can make it accurate, it's adjustable, and you can make it the same on both sides. And two, if you really start nerding out, which I think if you're watching the show, you have a little nerd in you, probably just a little bit, we can start doing things with some precision for creating better coverage in the room. It's a cool device.
True North found it.
Okay, all right.
Yep, it is the K&M speaker tilt connector.
All right. On our website, I hope?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
That's good. Well, like I said, you mention the show and we'll give you even a little better deal. So I feel bad making you do the legwork and looking for it. So
they're a very resourceful crew.
Thank you very much, True North.
So yeah, they definitely had the name of it. So cool. Well, neat.
He'll be happy to know that that's a campaign they're doing around town here now. And of course, we are very much the True North. It was 15 degrees today. That was a shock coming back from 83 in Texas. But there's sort of a local campaign called True North up here. So
Ian mentioned something about let me get the exact wording for it. a ring lock version.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? What does he mean by that?
Okay, so you got a speaker pull, right? And you put your speaker on it and it rattles around in there a little bit. The ring lock, when you turn it, expands pads inside the adapter and it grips the speaker. So, yes, thank you, Ian. Good mention there, my friend. That's right on the money.
Ah, sure. That's this one.
I really wish I could see the chat room. I know the show would go completely off the rails. I was going to say I'd have to carry the show for once, and that would not be good because we'd be just talking about a car chase. And now it looks like Ben got out of the car and he's fishing. But wait, here comes the taser. You know, I really did enjoy your car chase narrative.
Oh, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? He could be a couple of minutes late. Oh, we're going to have some fun with this.
Yeah, I was over at a friend's studio. He's a very competent recording engineer, and we were talking some shop and some nerdy, and you know, he had me listening to something just to kind of see what what maybe was missing, and he doesn't leave a lot of room for suggestions. I mean, his heart does, but his work doesn't. He's very good. So, but we talked about it a little bit, and then I skedaddled over here as quick as I could.
Yeah,
so.
and that he was. He's like,
with the Bemidji State Troopers behind me, as you say.
Good stuff. So, well, gang, we're going to wrap things up for our show for tonight. Thank you for being with us, and we'll be back. Let's see. Brian Red will be coming in about 15 minutes, give or take, and we'll be back with our second show. And then, Ben, I think we have one more show, and then we get into Christmas time. So
next week I'm in Ohio.
Okay.
We'll have to figure out what we're going to do Tuesday night there. So.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that and figure out exactly what will work out for us, and then we have to do something special for Christmas. Maybe we should make cookies.
I could bring my elf back. She's still excited about the last Christmas show we did. We could bake cookies.
Yeah, we'll have to do.
You want to see me bake cookies? That'll be a train wreck. You want to see a complete disaster? Cookies will look like this.
And then we'll have your son come down. We'll get his giving us his review of your cookies as he's eating them.
You know, if he doesn't want coal in his stocking, it'll be a good review.
Yeah, Dad, they're great.
He made dinner tonight. You know, it's kind of nice having a middle school aged son. You know, he's kind of handy. He made dinner and
very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, not so much around our house because they're all in plays or they're doing this and that and the other thing. So it's like sandwiches again.
Well, you know, we didn't. I mean, it wasn't an elaborate dinner, but it was certainly good. He did a good job. So.
Yeah, it worked. It does.
Trying to give him some of those life skills, you know.
Yeah, teach him early. Thank you guys for being with us. We'll be back in about 15 minutes, and we'll be back then tomorrow night. If you don't get a chance to catch Brian and I, tomorrow night we've got a couple more shows, and then it's Thanksgiving time. So if we don't see you, have a great Thanksgiving. Ben, thanks for being on tonight.
You bet.
And we're still on. Go off.
And we're still on.
We're still on.
Well, you know, then I can mention my isnt.